And in this panel, we'll be discussing the degree to which working with cloudcos can help or hinder telco's automation journey. Conversely, to what degree does the lack of telco-specific automation tools on clouds represent a barrier to running network workloads on the hyperscale cloud? And we'll aim to discuss different aspects of this question and look at it in the overall context of the so-called telco to techco transformation. And we've got three speakers with us today who are well qualified to offer us an expert insight into these topics. And I'm going to ask each of them in turn now to introduce themselves and say a few words about their work in these areas. So Santiago, I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Good morning, everyone. I'm head of Telco Cloud and IT Operations Transformations within Autonomous Network and Operations Transformation Group at Telefonica CTIO area. I've played key roles in various organizations and departments within the company for more than 20 years, leading the transformation of operations, processes, and systems. And over the last 5 years, my activity has consisted in transforming the operating model of the operating business at the Telefonica Group by promoting the automation and autonomy of our networks and systems for the telco, cloud, and IT technological domains in order to improve the customer experience, quality, and agility of our processes in the most efficient way.
Okay, thank you very much, Santiago. And Mirko, I don't know if you would like to say a few words about your own work.
Hi, morning, everyone. Mirko Voltolini. I run technology innovation, which is architecture innovation at Colt. So I'm responsible for development of new capabilities with a strong focus towards our services rather than purely internal. Before this job, I had responsibility for building our NAS proposition in the market. So I've been pushing innovation in particular with a strong customer perspective in mind over the last few years.
Okay, great. And now Terje, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Terje Jensen. So I'm heading up global business security in Telenor Group. So Telenor is an operator engaged in 80 different countries with more than 200 million customers. So offering mobile, fixed, TV, IoT security services. So I've been working more than 4 decades in the industry across the various roles, technology, strategy, researcher, and now, as I said, heading up the business security. So happy to go through, where we are and the Techco discussion as part of that, what we have been working on the last years, also in Telenor on shifting from telco to something else.
Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen. So let's get stuck into the discussion then. So first of all, I thought it'd be useful to set the context and for us to define what we understand by Techco, and consequently what this transition from telco to techco broadly entails, and then we can get into the detailed points. So sort of fairly high level to begin with. So as I started with Santiago last time, if I can go over to you, Santiago, for that question.
Transforming to a techco company means a lot of things for me, but basically means to capture the true potential of the transition of our network and systems toward disaggregated and softwareized architectures, encompassing significant changes and improvements in all the areas, from the networks and system architecture itself to the adaptation of the ways of working of the people, the new process framework, and obviously, in order to promote autonomy through data management, a very good governance model for the data, artificial intelligence, of course, automatic learning, but always placing the customer and the sustainability and security by design at the center of everything we do. As a techco company, we cannot manage the networks and the systems in the same way as we were managing previously in the past. A techco should implement a new operating model which will allow to take advantage of all the benefits that the network technologies can bring us.
Okay, great. That's really detailed answer to that question. So over to you, Mirko. What does telco to techco mean for you?
But yeah, I would agree several different things. A couple of important ones. Agility, first of all. If you compare Techcos, and we can take as an example some of the hyperscalers, the cloud companies, adapting quickly to change, innovation, the investment that is being made into research and development, fail fast, also co-creation, adopting more of a outside-in approach rather than inside-out, purely focusing on internal capabilities is one of the characteristics. I think telecom have a lot to learn in that respect. The second aspect, as I was also saying earlier, is digital adoption of digital capabilities, digital portfolio, customer experience, digital channels, becoming more data-driven. So using data as a key element for decisions, and exposing data to customers, so using it as integral part of the business. I'd say also adoption of APIs, so the actual channels, how do you actually get to market? So is this overall digital adoption encompassing what we then deliver to customers. There is an internal aspect, I'd say, automation on the back end, and then this external customer-facing aspect, which I think over the last few years resulted into this network as a service concept. How do we expose our capabilities to customers in a kind of like a cloud-like type of approach?
Okay, excellent. Another really detailed answer there. And there's lots of aspects that we can explore in more detail. And finally, Terje, if you'd like to set out your high-level view of telco to Techco.
Yeah, thanks, David. So just to complement maybe a bit what Santiago and Mirko said, of course, I fully agree on all the examples there. So we basically see that, in order to change from a traditional telco, or call it integrated telco, to a Techco, we really need to offer a much broader set of services to the customers. And that's aligned with what we see as a trend on the customer side, that they want to move from connectivity or broadband and SIM cards to solutions and experience they can trust. So that means that in order to match that, you need to have many more service components into your catalog, or into your offering, both for enterprises and for the consumers. And you need to be willing to take on an end-to-end responsibility in many of these cases. So the services needs to be broader. It needs to be allow themselves to be personalized, and they need to be delivered instantly, meaning now. And that, of course, implies a lot of changes on the way we are producing these services. And one of the examples is in enterprises that we have to, of course, still continuing delivering connectivity and coverage, but you need to add more devices. You need to be applications. There need to be data centers, compute environments. You need to have cloud offerings, typically security, analytics, operations, and so forth. So that means that in order for a traditional integrated telco and needs to embrace partnership to a much broader extent than what we have been doing. And you also need to break up, the internal way of you are organizing both the systems and the people side. So that's a rather fundamental change, actually, and going much broader than just replacing some technical systems. So I think that's the kind of the characteristics. Then, of course, we can go into the motivation for doing it, David, but we probably come back later in the session on why we are doing it.
Okay, excellent. Well, some fabulously detailed answers there. So to begin with, to try and get down into some of the detail, let's focus on the cloud aspects of it all. And firstly, look at the role that cloudification of telco infrastructure, network functions, and services play in the transition. And to put a sort of slightly provocative question here to you all, is becoming a Techco essentially just the same thing as becoming cloud native? Or is it something a bit broader and more sweeping than that? So perhaps if I can go to you, Santiago, is Techco just a cloud native company?
I think they are not the same thing, although the two concepts are in a tight relationship. Cloudification of telco infrastructure is an enabler itself. And this enabler or capability or characteristic is basic in the context of a Techco. The cloudification of the infrastructure is like an horizontal lever that can make possible to build some other capabilities over there. But and becoming a Techco for me is much more. Apart from having cloud native functions, cloud platforms, and so on, you also need a new way to manage all this new stuff, all these new containers, network functions, all this new infrastructure. Obviously, you also need new skills in the teams. These teams need to learn probably new methodologies and in a constant way. And probably it is also necessary to implement new organizations to facilitate the flow of innovation, which is really important at the end of the day in this new paradigm of softwareization of the network.
Okay, excellent. How about you, Mirko? Techco versus just cloud native. How do you see the role of cloud native operations in the Techco?
I'd say, maybe repeating a little bit also what Santiago said, cloud is an element, I think is a fundamental element, but in general, digitalizing capabilities and moving them from hardware-based to software-based helps a lot, because then that can enable automation. It removes some of manual steps that we use, and I mean, we say telco has gravity, so we actually have to deal with the fact that we have physical aspect in the delivery, but the more we can reduce that, the better it can help automation. Then the other aspect that Santiago was talking about is the people side. Creating that foundational capability isn't sufficient to turn a telco into a Techco. So you have to look at, I was talking about agility earlier, how do you change organization to enable you to use those capabilities in an effective manner? Because if you just keep maintaining the same processes and capabilities as you built for the traditional environment, then nothing is going to change. So that's also a fundamental aspect. I think it's probably the hardest that we can solve the technology equation over time, but the people and cultural aspect and transition into a different type of mindset takes even longer.
Okay, that's interesting that you're both emphasizing the people aspects of it. So Terje, Techco versus cloud native, what's the relationship?
Yeah, no, I think I'm on the same line as the two previous. So for us, cloudification is a journey. I think also Santiago said that, which many of the telecom operators have been on for a number of years already. But that means, at least from the start, basically, moving some of the network functions of some of the IT applications onto a cloud platform. That by itself, of course, comes with some benefits, but it really doesn't, make the big difference to change the into a Techco as such. Of course, it's a fundamental element, and it's a needed element to embrace the cloud and the cloud native. But it's not like there's a lot of other boxes to be checked or ticked if in order to qualify for a Techco, as I see it. So that means that there is yes, you need to be embrace this cloud native, but you also need to do much more, both on the system side, the people side, the way you're working with partners, and also the way you're working with customers. I think it was mentioned earlier as well. You need, in many cases, to become a Techco to embrace innovative way of work, co-creation with the customers and some of the enterprise customers. And that's a very different way. But of course, in order to support efficiently co-creation and to support the speed you need, cloud native is a very, very good element of it. So it's needed in a way, but it's not all you need. You need to do more.
Okay, excellent. So I guess just summarizing all of that, yes, cloud native is fundamental, but it's not the whole picture by any means. There are lots and lots of other aspects of it that come into play, holistically. So drilling down onto the automation question, because the sort of theme for this particular panel was to look at automation in that context. So perhaps I could ask you each in turn what you would say are the key automation goals for telcos as part of the evolution to a Techco. So automation specifically, what role does that play in this evolution towards Techco status? Santiago, would you like to say some words on that?
Of course. To automate and implement intelligence in all the activities of the processes of the whole life cycle of the service, from planning, building the service, testing, deployment, and operations processes. But looking at the details from business perspective, it is really important to build an open and softwareized network in order to unlock the potential of the new technologies, and also to be able to provide personalized and optimized customer experience in real time. And of course, build the necessary APIs and interconnections to offer the network as a service. If we look at the operations perspective, it is important to improve the network availability, align it with the customer experience, increase the agility in all network processes, and of course, implement autonomy in the whole life cycle process. And of course, efficiencies to reduce the total cost of ownership and avoid vendor locking. In summary, and in 5 words, agility to move fast and adapt even faster, intelligence, ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, predictive, intent-based, AI-powered, quality, high performance and availability, reduce manual errors, customer-centric, all decisions based on customer experience impact, efficiency, reduce TCOs, and streamlined workflows. And finally, sustainability, sustainable by design architectures.
Right. Okay. Well, that's an impressive sort of list of benefits from automation and sort of drivers for automation. Mirko, what would you like to say on sort of automation as part of this drive towards becoming Techcos?
Okay, I'd say what we as a Colt aim to achieve is 2 areas. One is, again, automating the customer experience, and the other aspect is automating the internal operations, the back-end operations. I think both are complementary and to some extent also overlapping. Automating customer experience, I think I'm repeating what I also said earlier, self-service, automated service, or API portal-based consumption of services, and a highly automated, standardized service delivery. If you look at the overall experience the customer have from I mean, we do B2B only, so it's typically a high-end, high maintenance type of experience for customers, obtaining quotes, placing order, activating services, and then managing services in life, the overall experience becoming digitalized. The benefits are twofold. If I can jump into that aspect of the question. One is delivering much faster, so transferring that agility to customers. And the second aspect is reducing unit cost. We can, and I can share some data. We did analyze our own experience. We now have thousands of services delivered through this platform we launched a few years ago, Colt On Demand. It cost us 30% less, considering the overall capex and also the opex, or the labor side of the experience. To deliver a service through a NAS platform. So that is fundamental. It is still a small portion of the overall delivery, but is significant. It's getting bigger and bigger. The second aspect is, as I said, is the automation of the back end. You have to avoid that front-end automation doesn't translate into a full back-end operations, because it's sometimes easier to take shortcuts and do a swivel chair approach on the back end, maintaining a digital experience on the front end. So network automation and heavy internal API adoption, modern systems plays a key role. So we're investing a lot into that space. There's a program internally called Colt.io that aims to transform and automate as much as possible the back-end operations.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Sort of looking at those two aspects in sort of tandem, really. Terje, how about you? Automation as part of the drive to becoming a Techco.
Now we see the key goals on automation. Of course, it spans a number of factors. I think a few of them have been or most of them have been mentioned already. So of course, to become faster or shorten time to resolve an issue, for example. So we have examples where we have managed to solve them about 99% of all the customer cases with trouble ticketing, and automating that loop, even including the feedback to the customer on what's the status and so on. And that of course improves also the customer experience. It's not only that it takes, we do it quicker. They feel more satisfied in the sense that they get the feedback quicker according to what they just reported and so on. And in many cases, we can also do it proactive in a way. So we are picking up, issues before and then notifying that there is something about to happen. So quicker or faster, I think is one of the things in all dimensions, both for the customers and also internally. Then we see that automation also tends to be more consistent. So it improves consistency or accuracy or quality or whatever kind of parameter you want to apply there, because it's always the same, logic behind there. So you take away a bit of the human creativity, which could be good or could be not be good, depending on the use cases, of course. But in many cases, we see that at least customers, they appreciate consistency in that way. Then, of course, efficiency. I think it was mentioned. So it tends also to be much more efficient in many processes. And lastly, I think I would highlight that it actually allows us to do more. It supports innovation. Given that we are, for example, one case, we have been implementing network slicing on demand. And that's a rather tedious process if you want to do it manually. It takes days, if not weeks, if you want to do it. And we can do it in less than an hour because the number of elements now to be configured as a network slice end to end. So that's kind of just an example on how automation can actually allow you to do more offers, more services, and it can be personalized as well. So you can adapt it to what are the individual customer needs in that sense. So I think there are a number of factors there, and then of course resilience in the organization. So you can do machines complementing people in that sense. And we also, I think it was mentioned earlier from was it Santiago, on that we are, of course, when you do AI into this, you're also able to do an assessment of much more data, so much more granular, both on the operation side, but also on the offerings and the engagement with customers. So the number of parameters actually we are targeting when we're looking into automation. It depends a bit on the process and the use case, exactly what parameters are the most important.
Oh, excellent. Well, there's a lot of consistent themes coming across, I think, there around efficiency, agility, speed, customer satisfaction, internal reorganization, and so on. So obviously, automation is pretty crucial, pretty central to the whole evolution towards becoming a Techco. Now, looking at the sort of heading for the seminar, which was particularly looking at working with cloudcos, hyperscalers, and how that might either support or hinder some of these automation goals, which is a different sort of perspective on the topic. So to begin with, I'd like to sort of look at two aspects, a sort of pro and con, if you like. So is it the case that the hyperscalers don't have enough telco-specific automation tools, and that would be a barrier to running network functions on the hyperscale cloud? Or does being truly cloud native and does having those kind of automated aspects running through your network mean that automation is built into the network function design, the orchestration templates, the processes, and that should be portable across any cloud? So is automation a barrier to running things on public cloud, or is that no longer really a factor because you're so fully up to speed with automation and cloud native that you should be able to run that on any cloud? So that's take those two aspects to begin with, and there's another aspect that I want to come into later on. So Santiago, how would you respond to that question framing there?
Okay, I think it's a balance. I will say, obviously, that the cloudcos and hyperscalers specifically have different advantages supporting the automation and the intelligence. It is obvious that they offer out of the box a set of activities already automated from the very beginning and transparent for the workloads which are running in the cloud, like monitoring, backup management, security, inventory management, assets lifecycle management, and so on. Second advantage from my point of view is the catalog of services that the hyperscalers offers to you in order to achieve higher automation. You only need to select, click, and configure. And finally, their AI platform, which is integrated and available to be used in the automation of all the activities that can help to achieve higher values of autonomy. But on the other side, there are also different cons and disadvantages that can hinder the automation. No, I will say that these aspects need to be considered in order to prepare and in order to avoid. No? Because if you don't manage certain aspects in the operating model, you don't take advantage of that. The first one is cost. We need to pay attention to the cost of the public clouds and develop optimization models controlling the consumption, which has a strong impact in the OpEx. And thanks, for instance, to the FinOps methodologies or practices, we can maximize the value obtained from the public cloud. At the end of the day, that means we need to transform again our operating model, our processes, and all of that is related to the proper transformation to a Techco. So this is not a factor directly offered by the hyperscalers. You need to adapt. You need to transform your operating model to develop new methodologies in your teams. Second topic for me in the cons is the lack of standardization between different hyperscalers. Hyperscalers promote the concept of cloud native. For example, the ability to move workloads because they are based on the use of open source projects that define de facto standards such as Kubernetes or others. So automation processes can be replicable and tools can be based on common interfaces. But the challenge here is to ensure that workloads are designed with this cloud native vision from the beginning, without the specific ties to the infrastructure on which they will be running. For example, without requiring a specific modification to the service mesh that deviates from the open source project. So you need to take into consideration these constraints, these aspects in order to take all the advantage of the public cloud philosophy. No? If you don't take it into account, it will be impossible to move workloads from one hyperscaler to another. No? For that reason, the standardization is really important. And finally, I think it's necessary to promote, again, standards and common practices. One example is the Focus initiative promoted by the FinOps Foundation in order to standardize the naming of the billing data, which is really important. And thanks to this initiative, all the billing reports coming from different hyperscalers will be using the same language, and this initiative will help in the adoption of FinOps, definitely.
Right. Okay, that's really helpful answer. So, in a way, to summarize, yes, the hyperscalers offer a lot of very valuable tools that can help automation, but that doesn't mean that the telco doesn't have to manage all of that very carefully as part of the transformation that it's going through to acquire those Techco skills and processes itself. It's not a replacement for something that the telco would have to do internally in any case. So, Mirko, what would you like to say on these questions about the role of cloudcos in either supporting or hindering automation?
Yeah, so there are lots of capabilities available on the cloud that can help us build automation. However, I'd say there is no, I think as you hinted in the question, there is no telco as a service ready capability to download and or use and deploy. So you have to compose and create the capabilities based on the available tools. And so there is quite a lot of help, but the amount of work is still certain amount of work is still required. We actually employ a hybrid model. Not everything that we have is in the cloud. Partly is on-prem. It does make sense, and it's partly also due to a transition that happens over time, as some of our backend IT capabilities are not yet fully migrated. We have to stay close to certain modules and elements of our IT stack to deliver automation, and so this is going to happen over time. I'd like to say maybe a second aspect, just to add another angle of this. The very fact that application services are moving to the cloud, not just for us, but also for our customers, especially enterprises, creates an opportunity in the sense that is moving capabilities and endpoints away from traditional on-prem locations. So it becomes easier to create a proposition. So cloud-to-cloud type of offerings are enabled, again, by the very fact that workloads are in the cloud. So it's much easier to design and automate a service that connect clouds, or a multi-cloud service with lots of sophistication, adding performance reporting, visibility, observability of the service, using endpoints that sits in the cloud. So an example of this, moving SD-WAN endpoints, workloads to a cloud environment where the customer has their locations, their applications, then enable us to create those capabilities in a very digital, automated fashion. So I think that's not something to be underestimated.
Okay, well, that's another aspect to it, which is very interesting. Actually, when you're running services in the cloud already, that sort of facilitates new types of automation that you can also run and manage in the cloud. Terje, what would you like to say on this particular question?
I think before we maybe go into that question, that was just to remind that, of course, as Telco, we are delivering public services, and we are being part of what we call a critical infrastructure in many countries. So that means that there are restrictions actually from the regulatory or the governmental point of view in many countries on how we can implement these functions. In like, for example, in one country is that we have to make sure that all the network components to offer these public services are located in that country and fully operated with people within the border of that country without any influence from abroad. And that typically, it challenges a bit on some of the public cloud models. So just remember that there are additional factors coming into play on how to collaborate there. But having said that, of course, it's always, as I say, it's always good to work together with the cloudcos to address these issues. We see that some of them are on the way to offer what we call sovereign cloud solutions, and we are doing that jointly also in some of the countries. And that's not only for our workloads; it's also for enterprises and many other industries who are having the same kind of needs. So it's good to see that the cloudcos are on that journey together with us as a telco. But I think it's also mentioned earlier, there are a number of other factors, of course, and we work together with the cloudcos and many of them, and we can probably see some of the partnership we have announced the last months on this to learn from them, as well as also to help them learn from us on how they can become better. So, but having said that, we have, as of course, a multi-cloud strategy. I think David, what you said in the beginning, as many others. So that means that from the beginning, we want to have the flexibility to allocate the different workloads, network functions, IT applications, or even enterprise applications onto different cloud environments. Then you have to be very careful. I think Santiago mentioned that in the beginning, that if you do that and fully, use the embedded or built-in services in those cloud functions, there will be a challenge if you want to move out. So you need to be very careful from and conscious from the very beginning on how many of these services you actually want to utilize. So we have been through some examples where we are moving workloads or applications between cloud environments, and it could take everything from just a couple of weeks to several months, depending on how tightly you have been connected to all the services which are available in those cloud environments. So again, you have to do your own homework. You have to make your own plans, and then of course reach out to the cloudcos to make use of all their good things, because there are quite a few good things they are coming with, and of course many of them are coming from the cloud native mindset, which is also good for us to understand and also take benefit from. We see that there are tools out there which can be supporting a bit more cloud multi-cloud setup. Of course, not all of them are fully up to the level, and not all of them are fully also addressing what we call what our need, which is end-to-end orchestration. So there will be domain orchestrators and so on, which need to be bolted together. But we also see a trend there that there are companies waking up to this opportunity. And again, I think it was mentioned earlier that it's not only a telco industry challenged or need. It's a much broader need from other industries, whether that's financial, for example, or larger manufacturing, for example. So many others also have the similar needs, I think. So that's so we are working with, of course, with the cloudcos. But there are also a few steps, of course, and we have to take care of our own business as in all cases.
Okay, yeah. So I guess what's emerging is it's an extremely multifaceted issue. That's no simple answer to it. There are lots of benefits, including automation benefits from working with cloudcos, but equally it has to be managed extremely carefully, and both from the security perspective that you've introduced there, Terje, but also in terms of making sure that the resilience is there, and that the automation techniques that you've already evolved can be successfully managed in conjunction with cloud tools and environments. We've had a question coming in on the Q&A, so I might just interrupt our own Q&A here to just float it by you. And this question says, what is your experience with the accomplishment of SLA regarding the cloud migration of companies, especially taking into consideration the future regulation that may occur following the Data Act? Can you kindly develop these matters? So looking at how SLAs are affected by cloud migration and considerations of the recently introduced Data Act. Who would like to sort of jump in and tackle that question?
I can maybe start on that, then of course if others can add on to that. So at least our experience that we have moved fairly, though a smaller scale. We have moved a full mobile core, for example, onto a public cloud, and that was running perfectly on the same SLA level as the other implementation. So it's doable, of course. It needs to be planned accordingly to where you are, and also according to the services you want to offer. So it's doable as we see it. And SLA and mobile core typically is a bit hard on some of the performance requirements, both on availability but also on latency. So you can do it. And then another, I think, aspect of the question is about the Data Act, and then we have inputs like, for example, the sovereign cloud, which I mentioned earlier. So we are working with also the cloud companies to comply with those sovereign requirements, which are national autonomy kind of things. And there are solutions out there, components which need to be put together to comply with this. So yes, it's doable, but of course, you need to be in the driving seat if you want to you need to be aware of what you're doing, and you also need to be on top of the analysis of how this is coming together, all the components.
Okay. Santiago, would you like to answer that particular question?
Yes, to add what Terje is telling, it is important to do a very good design at the beginning in order to comply and to fulfill the different SLAs, especially in terms of performance and reliability. It is supposed that one of the advantages of the hyperscalers, that they put at your service different capabilities and service to make a good configuration in theory, but also you need a very good testing in order to ensure that you are going to fulfill the required SLAs by your customers, because the theory is easy. The practice is really the challenge, and you need to ensure with the proper testing you are going to fulfill the SLAs, making the exactly test that you need. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems as though testing and monitoring is particularly key here. Mirko, what answer would you like to give to that question?
I'd say maybe reflecting on the aspect from mobile and fixed network perspective. I think lots of work, as Terje was saying, has been done on the mobile side to create architectures that are robust to run in the cloud. That's not the same story for fixed network services. So I think there is still a lot of work to do. Earlier, I mentioned that we have a hybrid cloud approach. So some of our capability sits in the cloud, some others sits on-prem. Some of that is dictated by the fact that we are not able to guarantee with a cloud full cloud approach the same level of service capabilities and hence SLA with a full with a 100% cloud-based approach. The other aspect of the question was the data act sovereignty. I'd like to add another angle to that. We're working on network sovereignty alongside the data sovereignty, so the ability to control data in motion, not just at rest in the network. That's another interesting aspect. How could the regulation evolve in the future and requirements could evolve in the future? More maybe just the regulation is also company requirements. There is lots of geopolitical challenges around the world at the moment, and so being able to control how data moves and how data is stored is a fundamental thing.
Okay, great, thank you. We're moving more towards the question and A time, really. We've got just a few minutes left for our discussion. Another question that's come in is here. Is the TCO of moving to cloud for telco functions justified? Have operators been able to achieve good cost reductions? I think we've already sort of looked at some of the cost reductions and the challenges about managing costs in the public cloud. Who would like to sort of tackle this particular question?
I can start. Maybe again, I mentioned earlier 30% savings, but those savings come from the combination of automation and which is aided by cloud. So cloud itself isn't the answer to reducing costs. In fact, it could also be the other way around. Cloud can be more expensive if you just look at it from on the face value. I think you need to look at actually, the question does talk about TCO. What is the overall benefit you get from a cloud-based environment? I also mentioned earlier the ability to create services in a much more sophisticated and automated manner from the outset, rather than try to retrofit a manual capability into a digital one. So I think that's part of the overall calculation you need to make.
Right, so the cost benefits aren't necessarily obvious, but also obviously they has to be managed very carefully, but also it's much more about also innovation and the benefits of automation. Santiago, how would you like to address that question?
Yes, I agree with Mirko. We have similar references in order to 30% of efficiency, but in order to achieve these figures, it is really important to take advantage of the scale of moving network workloads and IT workloads in one single horizontal platform, because this is one of the key, to put all the NEPs framework in one single cloud platform can leverage to achieve the efficiencies. So this is a really important topic. The scale, yes. I will say.
Yeah, sure. Terje, how would you like to address that question.
Yeah, no, I think it's important when you talk about cost that we're not really only talking about cost, but it's a value. so there are a number of other parameters coming into this. So of course we can talk about the cost, of the, call it the cloud platform versus hardware or infrastructure. Then you have the cost of the applications, so workloads are running on top. Then you have the cost of the operations around it, and you have to compare all these kind of elements to that. So that's just one dimension. Then you have to, what other value parameters are there? For example, a quicker to market. For example, we have example where we came with a new function implemented in 2 days. So it would take months, if you want to ship the hardware. So there are other values as well to come into this. And we also see that, for example, doing cloud native now, it's not on the telco function, but the other network function could reduce the cost and reduce the time by much more than 50%. So there are other aspects of taking these steps into automation and embracing cloud native.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really good. So we've had a very rounded discussion. I think looked at this whole question in the round, different facets: operational, organizational, skills, customer focus, and so on. So it's been really good discussion. Now, just to round off, with about a minute left. Final question, 1 or 2 sentence answer from each of you. How far do you think telcos will get with their transformation in the next 10 years? So since you're on, Terje, how would you rate this?
Next 10 years is almost forever, I think. But yeah, so but we have set a bit of an ambition, of course, on trying to be fully automated, and it's back to where I started. We see that the customers are asking for that. So to be relevant, you need to embrace automation by default.
Okay, Santiago, your quick answer to that question.
Definitely, we are building the pillars towards a full autonomy network, which means to be completely autonomous, and self-learning is embedded and covers multi-domain aspects. Definitely in the future, in the next years, the highest levels of autonomy will be based in capability of making complex decisions and taking advantage of this artificial self-learning.
Okay, now very quickly, so I think we've actually more or less run out of time. Mirko?
I'd say the ones that will not embrace and execute on this transformation will not be around. I think there will be significant acquisitions, M&A, and some tough times for the ones that are not going to be able to do that. I think it's a must.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you very much, everyone.
It was a fantastic discussion. Thank you very much, David, for moderating, and to Terje, Santiago, and Mirko for such excellent contributions.